Welcome back. Welcome back. Really? Really? Self-awareness is a great practice. Self-awareness is like I was saying, practicing self-awareness is a great practice for growth. It is an aspect of social emotional learning. As powerful as it can be for adults, it can be even more impactful for students. Let's take a look at some ways to foster self-awareness for students. So we're continuing the SEL series, where you're going to jump right into self-awareness as the first component. So we're going to have an overview, look at the purpose, some key traits and strategies, look at the benefits, as well as keys to remember. So defining self-awareness, again, it's a core competency of SEL, social emotional learning. It's the ability to recognize your own emotion, thoughts, and values, and understand how they influence one's behavior. Okay. This is your textbook definition, but we're going to be looking at self-awareness under the context of the classroom environment. So what's the purpose of it? You're able to identify emotions, build confidence, and by doing that, you improve your decision making and support emotional regulation. There has been an uptick in the emotional imbalance in classrooms and things like that, increase in students acting out. Yes, the changes in behavior policies and discipline policies across the board have influenced this, but also that sense of self-awareness that used to organically come about is not as prevalent as it was, in previous generations. This is not a criticism; it's just a reality. So you can look at factors such as, the increase in technology, isolation, even COVID isolation, where you're not taking the time to become self-aware because we're so engaged with technology and things like that. So self-awareness is not as prevalent as it might have been in previous years. So now it's something that we have to focus explicitly on teaching and fostering in the classroom. So what are the key traits? It recognizes emotions. Because they can recognize their emotions, students build self-confidence because they're aware of themselves. They understand their strengths and their weaknesses, and they can highlight their strengths and improve on their weaknesses. It's reflective, and it emanates a growth mindset. The self-awareness, when taught explicitly, helps students understand, hey, yes, this is where I am, but I can improve on that at any time. I'm not a fixed entity where this is how I will be for the rest of my life, unless I choose to. So what are some considerations? So when you're dealing with self-awareness, you want to understand cultural differences. You want to make sure that you're not fostering behaviors that are contradictory to a person's culture. You want to make sure that they're trauma informed. So when you're dealing with trauma, as a classroom teacher, I may not have the capacity for that. However, if I can help students be aware that they are facing trauma, now I can present them with resources and outside supports that can be of benefit to them. It helps with developmental readiness. What does that mean? By being self-aware, I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses. So when I'm looking at even academic information, I know, okay, I need a little more prerequisite skills, or you know what? I already understand this. Let's go. You want to have teacher modeling. Exactly. So the teacher needs to be modeling self-awareness as well. It doesn't have to be, this complex process, just the teacher thinking out loud or thinking out loud about how they're progressing through a lesson could be an example of the teacher modeling self-awareness. And then it should be daily integration. It's not just something that you introduce and you walk away from. No, it's something that we practice daily. So what are some strategies I can use in the classroom? I can use emotional check-ins, journaling, goal setting, think alouds. We just talked about that. Mindfulness, emotion charts. These are just some of the strategies you can utilize to help explicitly teach self-awareness in the classroom. Now we're going to get to later on some of the grade band strategies specific for the grade bands. Again, interchangeable. But these are just some that you can peruse and start with. Again, some more SEL in lessons. We've talked about in the overview of SEL how to embed SEL in your lessons, self-assessments. You can do role play, make connections with literature, exposure to new experiences, and creative expression. Okay, all these strategies can help students learn self-awareness and practice self-awareness on a regular basis without it being some, albatross of an assignment or what have you. You can build it in little by little. Nobody is expecting teachers to become, clinical psychologists. That's not what we're talking about here. But we're talking about introducing the skill, just like you would for multiplication, just like you would for, parts of speech. Introduce this so that students have the resources in order to further engage with it. Charles, why am I going to do all this? I have so much to do. Why am I going to do this? Here are the benefits for the teachers. Better management. If the kids are aware, self-aware, they take more accountability for their actions, and you have better classroom management. When you teach them to be self-aware, you create stronger relationships because they're understanding who they are and you're walking them through this process and they see that you actually care. You have higher engagement because now it's not just about the academics. It's me as a whole student that is getting the benefit of your classroom. So I'm more engaged, and then you have fewer disruptions. So what are some of the benefits for the students? Better emotional regulation. They have more confidence because they understand, hey, yeah, I might not be a mathematician, but I'm great at English. Or I might not understand parts of speech, but I can multiply and divide because I understand my strengths and weaknesses, so I have more confidence. Better social skills. When you're self-aware, you are able to interact with people on a more authentic and real level. So interactions socially in your classroom will improve. They make better decisions because now they're conscious and aware of what they're doing and how it's going to impact them. And self-awareness also fosters persistence. So when it gets rough, they're aware of themselves, they know what their limits are, and they can push themselves accordingly. So what are the school benefits? School benefits, you create a more positive climate. Again, fewer discipline issues, you have better attendance, and a stronger overall culture. Stronger individuals make for a stronger culture. Okay, the weaker your individuals are, the weaker your school culture is, right? So when you're creating or fostering and explicitly teaching self-awareness as part of the social emotional learning, you're creating stronger individuals, ultimately creating a stronger school culture. Okay, here's what, we're looking at as educators. What's the impact on achievement, right? I'm doing all this. I got to get these kids' scores up, right? Okay, we're going to address it. So impact on achievement, you have improved focus. You have long-term success, better problem solving, and higher performance. Okay, I'm aware of who I am, what my limitations are, my strengths, my weaknesses. I'm focusing on honing my strengths, and I am focusing on developing my weaknesses because I know I can, because by being self-aware, I fostered this growth mindset. So, some examples of grade band, examples of how we can foster self-awareness and explicitly teach self-awareness in the classroom. You can have feeling charts, allow drawing of emotions. You can have morning circles and create simple goals for students, right? So once they are aware of their strengths and weaknesses, maybe you do a self-assessment to start off. They understand, okay, I'm strong here. I have a couple of growth areas. I want to focus on these growth areas. I'm going to set some simple goals for the first semester. Let's see if we can achieve those. Middle school, you can have emotion journals, goal tracking, short-term goals. We're not talking, year-long goals. Break it down into quarters, break it down into semesters, break it down into weeks if you have to. Get them started somewhere and they can grow accordingly. You don't start off as this big old oak tree. No, you start off as a little seed. Boom, little by little, you grow. This is not about, 1 year, this kid is going to transform into this self-aware, social, emotional, phenom. That's not what we're talking about. But we want to start explicitly teaching so they can build on those little steps as they matriculate throughout the school career. You can have peer discussions and definitely reflections. So for high school, you can have reflective essays, career assessments. Where am I going to go? Where are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? What career field might be beneficial for me? You can foster stress management. Everybody can benefit from that. We can do that as a class at the high school level without a doubt. And then self-evaluations. So awareness is the greatest agent for change. Once I'm aware of something, it's very hard to convince myself that I'm not aware, right? So once I'm aware of, oh, you know what, this behavior that I'm doing is disruptive for everybody else, I'm cognizant of it. All of a sudden, when I'm doing it, I'm more hesitant because I understand the repercussions of it. I'm understanding how I'm affecting things, right? So we want to teach students to be aware of their behaviors, of their emotions, of their feelings, and their actions so that they can take steps to regulate them. And like we said, start small and build daily. So some keys to remember. It's the foundation of SEL. You have to be aware in order to, you have to be aware of yourself in order to regulate your social and emotional learning process. It must be taught. We can't assume, oh, you should know better. Oh, you should be aware of this. No, we have to teach it to them. We can't make the assumption that they know. We have to teach it to them. Okay? We have to be consistent, as with everything else. We want to do it in a safe environment. If you have to break them up into small groups, maybe this is one of your rotation stations. So you're going to have, your parts of speech station, you're going to have your multiplication station, and then you're going to have your self-awareness station. Students are rotating, so you can embed it into, your structures as is. And then it's daily practice. It doesn't have to be something major. It could be a warm-up. It could be an exit ticket. It could be a break activity. So we've done heavy academics. We're going to do a SEL break, boom, self-awareness, and then we're going to go back into our heavy academics. So it doesn't have to be this, like I said, albatross that sits in front of the class and holds everybody captive. Absolutely not. It should be seamlessly embedded, but we have to teach them explicitly. We cannot assume that they understand how to be self-aware. So we hope that was helpful. Remember, self-awareness is a skill. It must be explicitly taught in order for students to understand and use it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.